My project is looking at the relationship between high protein intake and cardiovascular disease. Over the past few decades, the concept of a high protein diet has risen in popularity. This interest comes along with weight loss diets and a strong interest in gym culture. So far, the message has seemed to be that eating a high protein diet can help individuals lose weight and improve their performance at the gym. However, what other impacts can high protein diets have on someone's health? My research question is, what are the effects of a high protein diet on risk of cardiovascular disease? So, what is cardiovascular disease? Cardiovascular disease refers to a number of conditions that affect the heart and blood vessels, including heart disease, heart attack, and stroke. Many of these conditions are related to atherosclerosis, which refers to the buildup of fats, cholesterol, and other substances, collectively called plaque, on artery walls. The buildup of plaque can cause arteries to narrow or burst, impacting the flow of blood to the heart. Atherosclerosis is the leading cause of myocardial infarction and stroke. So, what is a high protein diet? The recommended daily intake for protein is between 0.8 and 1 gram per kilogram of body weight per day, which would correspond to about 10 to 15% of a person's total calories or daily energy requirements. A high protein diet would refer to a diet in which protein makes up more than that amount. People in Western societies tend to consume more than the recommended amount of protein. 1 out of 4 people in the US consumes more than double the recommended amount, where protein makes up 22% of their daily caloric intake. In some cases, especially in weight loss diets, protein intake was as high as 40% of total calories. So, what are the impacts of consuming a high protein diet? Eating protein has several impacts, but the one that we will focus on in light of the high protein diet is its activation of the mTORC1 complex. mTORC1 is a protein complex that plays a crucial role in regulating growth and proliferation within a cell. Some of its notable functions are to increase protein synthesis, inhibit protein degradation, and inhibit autophagy, which is the process by which cells degrade and recycle proteins and organelles to maintain intracellular homeostasis. The mTORC1 complex is activated by growth factors such as insulin, energy in the form of ATP, and importantly, amino acids, specifically leucine and arginine. This is important, but we will talk more about that later. While activation of mTORC1 is crucial for cell growth, overactivation of mTOR can have negative consequences on certain physiological processes in the body, including atherosclerosis. Overactivation of the mTOR complex is problematic, particularly in the macrophages of atherosclerotic plaques. A macrophage is a type of white blood cell that kills microorganisms, removes dead cells, and activates other immune system cells. They play an important role in atherosclerosis. During formation of an atherosclerotic plaque, monocytes move into vessel walls where they transform into macrophages. The macrophages eat the LDLs, or low-density lipoproteins, that are in the plaque and turn into foam cells. The high lipid content of the LDLs they ate is toxic to them, and they die, releasing the lipids they contain and leading to an inflammatory reaction. The accumulation of these monocyte-derived macrophages leads to plaque necrosis and continuation of plaque inflammation. So, how exactly does overactivation of the mTOR complex lead to atherosclerosis? Let's look at a study conducted by Zhang and other scientists. So, after eating a high protein meal, blood amino acid levels rise, and so do plasma amino acid levels. In response to these high amino acid levels, the mTORC1 complex is activated in plaque macrophages. Activation of the mTORC1 complex has several downstream effects. One of them is inhibition of autophagy. Remember that this is the removal of organelles and proteins to maintain homeostasis, which leads to accumulation of damaged mitochondria within a macrophage, leading to apoptosis. The increased apoptosis of plaque macrophages leads to further buildup, further inflammation, which all ultimately contributes to development of atherosclerosis. This graphic shows a little bit of how the study was conducted, which was tested on mice. So mice were given high-protein foods that mimicked the content of high-protein human meals. Here you can see a monocyte entering the vessel walls and turning into a macrophage. It is ingesting excess lipids, and you can see here the amino acids from the high-protein meal. The amino acids activate the mTORC1 complex, which inhibits autophagy, or mitophagy in the case of macrophages. This inhibition of autophagy prevents the macrophage from removing damaged mitochondria and fighting against the toxic lipid levels it accumulates, ultimately leading to apoptosis. The apoptotic cells then accumulate and build up in the plaque, contributing to atherosclerosis. Importantly, this study found that the amino acid leucine was the most potent inducer of the mTORC1 complex. It activated mTORC nearly 4 times as much as the other amino acids. Leucine promotes detrimental overactivation of mTORC1 in the range of high-protein diets, where 22% of the energy is protein. Now let's look at another study. In Sweden, a study observed the long-term effects of low-carbohydrate and high-protein diets, which are typical of weight loss diets, on cardiovascular health. This study mainly looked at Swedish women from 30 to 49 years who were followed for an average of 15.7 years. What they found was that a decrease in carbohydrate intake or increase in protein intake was statistically significantly associated with increased incidence of cardiovascular disease. What is notable about this study is that whether the source of protein came from plants or animals was important. In comparison with other similar cohort studies, low-carb diets of mainly animal origin had a positive association with heart disease, while low-carb diets of vegetable origin decreased risk of heart disease. So, there is another side to the story. The source of protein matters. Diets that are high in plant proteins rather than animal proteins may reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. This makes sense. Leucine, as you remember, which is the strongest activator of the mTORC1 complex, is mainly present in animal proteins. So, what foods are plant sources of protein and which foods are animal sources? How can people reduce their risk for cardiovascular disease? Here's a chart with foods with high leucine content. As you can see, animal sources contain higher concentrations of leucine for smaller portions, and the opposite is true for plant sources. Having a healthy balance of plant and animal proteins is important for reducing the risk of cardiovascular disease. Many plant proteins contain all 20 amino acids, including the 9 essential amino acids. In addition to making sure protein intake meets the recommended daily allowance, it is beneficial to replace animal protein sources with plant protein sources. Plant-based protein sources include beans and legumes such as lentils, chickpeas, and peanuts, broccoli, nuts and seeds, oats, tofu, and quinoa, among many others. In addition to their protein content, plant-based protein sources come along with fiber, vitamins, minerals, and other important nutrients. So what can we make of all this? To go back, the research question was, what are the effects of a high-protein diet on cardiovascular disease? To sum up, it was found that excess protein, particularly leucine, caused activation of the mTORC1 complex in macrophages, which led to further development of atherosclerotic plaques. However, the source of protein is important. Leucine is found mainly in animal diets, and it was found that in comparison, plant-based protein diets had a decreased risk of cardiovascular disease. So, in conclusion, a high animal protein diet increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, and it seems that a high plant protein diet would decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease. There is still research that remains to be done on the causes of both protein sources, but I hope that this has helped clarify the subject for you and given you the knowledge to empower your own nutritional choices.